sometimes it happens, where there is a major power breakdown and the whole city is plunged in darkness, and you're full of electrical gadgets, and we are so used to electricity that you don't understand, okay, the lights have gone, let me pick up the phone and ring up the BST, or what is it here? Reliance Energy. Pick up the phone, it's not working. Why? The cordless is hooked onto the electricity. Then you say, okay, let me heat the food in a microwave. Not working. You understand the value of electricity because once in a while the electrical supply goes. You never understand the value of Brahman because Brahman never switches off. Thank God for that. And something that is always with you, you tend to take for granted, isn't it? When you're married for 35 years, you take your spouse for granted. What else will she do? She has to be around. It's like that. You've taken Brahman for granted. You should never take anybody for granted, either Brahman or your spouse. Sometimes you must think in terms of what does she need? What are her aspirations? What are her desires? Let me look at it from her standpoint. Why should I always look at it from my standpoint? Whether it's her or him. So, never take anything for granted. If Brahman were to switch off, we'd all be in trouble. Prime mover of all movements. And then, eyes, ears, head, mouths, he's speaking of the basic cycle of life. All of us go through a cyclical pattern in life. The world enters us, stimuli from the world enter us through the eyes and ears. You hear and you see. So intake of stimuli is indicated by eyes and ears. Having entered your system, these stimuli react with the desires in your mind and intellect, and this is referred to as head. Collectively, mind and intellect is referred to as head. Once there is a reaction of the stimuli with the desires in your mind and intellect, then there is this transmission of the reaction back into the world as responses, and this is done, the output of action is done through the mouth. The mouth is one organ of action which represents collectively all the organs of action. So what he's saying here is everything, this entire cycle emanates from Brahman. Brahman is the supporter of all these three transactions. And then he says, Sarvam avrutya tishtati. Brahman pervades, avrutya pervades the whole world, and tishtati exists in its pristine glory minus the world, beyond the world. So it's not just that Brahman is confined to this universe. In this universe itself we find difficult to conceive. I don't know how you can conceive a star that is millions and millions of light years away from Earth. And that too is not the end of the universe. From there on again there's millions and millions of light years. The universe itself is inconceivable. But what he's saying is, Brahman pervades this entire universe and tishtati, exists apart beyond this as the unmanifest. Just as electricity pervades all electrical gadgets throughout the world. But electricity is not confined to electrical gadgets. Electricity exists in its unmanifest form, and perhaps the power there is much greater than all the manifestations. That's what he's saying. Same thing with petrol. Petrol is the prime mover, pervades the movement of every car in the world. But petrol exists in its unmanifest form, without movement. In, what do they call it? Oil? Wherever, the refineries. By itself, the huge containers you see of petrol, unmanifest. So, in the same way, he's talking about this. These paradoxical statements appear throughout Vedantic scriptures, but it appears in science also, in physics. For instance, they say a photon is a wave when traveling in space, but when it hits an object, it becomes a particle. So they call it wavicle. It's a wave and a particle both. When an electron shifts from one orbit to the other, it doesn't travel in the intervening space. It's either here or then it's there in the other orbit. How does it travel there? They don't know. So even in physics, you find concepts that baffle you. How does this take place? You don't know. And when it comes to Brahman, it is much more paradoxical because it's beyond the intellect, you cannot understand it. And that's why all of us are struggling. You can feel the struggle. Before you struggle anymore, we'll move. 15.
Sarvendriya gunabhasam Sarvendriya vivarjitam Asaktam sarvabhruchaiva Nirgunam gunabhoktrucha.
Manifesting through the qualities of all the senses, yet without any senses. Asaktam, unattached, yet maintaining all. Nirgunam, without gunas, qualities, yet their enjoyer. What he is trying to say is that Atman pervades, facilitates, enables every transaction in the world and yet has nothing to do with any of it. That's the basic idea that he is trying to communicate. Sarvendriya, Sarva Indriyas means 10 organs of perception and action. 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. All these, Atman enables them to function. But itself, Atman has no senses. Atman doesn't see, hear, smell, touch, taste. Atman doesn't act. And yet, Atman facilitates all actions. An example of this is in chemistry, a catalyst. A catalyst of a chemical reaction is one in whose presence the reaction takes place. Without the catalyst, the reaction cannot take place. And yet the catalyst has nothing to do with the reaction. It's untouched by the reaction. That much of chemistry you know, right? Amazing how it happens. If you can understand that, you can understand this. Atman is the facilitator, the enabler, that in whose presence all the Indriyas function. And you look at the Indriyas, forget Atman, just to understand the functioning of the Indriyas itself is so fascinating. How does the eye see? Do you know that the image, whatever it is that you're seeing right now, the image appears upside down in your eye. But fortunately for us, we don't see upside down. The mind is upside down maybe, but the vision is not upside down. Fantastic how it appears. That in itself is a science. Then hearing. The mechanism of hearing, how the sound waves hit your middle and inner ear and the reactions that take place and how it's converted to a nervous impulse that reaches your brain and then it, forget just hearing, but you make some sense out of all the sounds that come to you. And how sophisticated our organs of perception are. Taste. Apparently we have 9,000 taste buds. And when you eat food, every little, the texture, the taste, whether it is sour or sweet or salty, or the slightest difference is picked up by the taste buds. Hands, fingers, the way your fingers move. It's only when something goes wrong that you understand, oh my God, this is so complicated. One little ligament, one little bone, one little thing goes off, you're totally paralyzed. You can't do it. You can't do anything. All this is supported by Atman, is facilitated by Atman, but Atman itself doesn't perceive, has no senses. Just as electricity enables all kinds of electrical gadgets, that in itself is also amazing. It generates, it creates, enables the refrigerator to cool, the freezer to freeze, the air conditioner to function, the heater to function. Diverse activities take place, all supported by electricity. But electricity itself, the temperature never goes up or down. Electricity supports, manifests through the qualities of all electrical gadgets, yet without any manifestation. Asaktam, unattached, yet supporting all, sustaining all. You know, when you understand this, then you get some indication of how to operate in the world. In the world, emotionally, we are either indifferent, means that we've switched off emotionally, there's no interaction at all, or the moment the emotions start playing, you get attached. You get attached to anything you come in contact with. You'll see now, people who come regularly, by the time the 6th day comes, you feel the pangs of separation. You say, oh, from tomorrow onwards, you get attached to this activity. From tomorrow onwards, what will I do? So sad. So the moment your emotions come into play, there's attachment. The third possibility is unknown to us, which is sustain it, participate wholeheartedly, and yet maintain a distance. Asaktam sarvabhrutchaiva. Sarvabhrut, you're maintaining everything. You're contacting the world through your emotions. You're interacting with the world emotionally. You're establishing relationships. Yet, deep down, asaktam. This is the most difficult. You try it. The moment the emotion comes into play, you're lost, completely lost. And if you manage to keep your head above water, there are no emotions. But to maintain both is what is difficult. Then he says, nirgunam, without gunas. The gunas are sattva, rajas, tamas. Sattva is purity, rajas is passion, tamas is ignorance. And all of us have all these three qualities. This is Vedanta's most outstanding contribution to humanity. This analysis of human thought into three distinct categories. We're approaching the end of this session, and there's a fatigue. So tomorrow when you're fresh, we'll take a look at sattva, rajas, tamas in greater detail. But what he's saying here is, these three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, exist in all of us. Atman is without gunas, gunatita. Ganesha is referred to as gunatita, means atita, beyond gunas. And yet their enjoyer. Enjoyment comes, he uses the word enjoyer, guna bhoktru, which indicates that only when you're objective, only when you're detached from something can you enjoy a thing. When you're attached, you cannot enjoy. The only thing you have access to is suffering. But you don't see it. The beauty of it is, you see somebody else's attachment. And then you say, how, when you see attachment in somebody else, it disgusts you. Because attachment in itself is a disgusting quality. It puts you off. But what you don't see is, you perhaps have attachment far greater than what you're seeing and passing judgment on. Once you understand these concepts, you begin to see where you are attached. You begin to see that attachment is the root cause of all your suffering. And then slowly you try and distance yourself, in the sense you try and get over this attachment. It is detachment that is true love, not attachment. So Gunas can function only where there is Brahman, Atman supporting them. But Brahman or Atman has nothing to do with the three gunas. 16.
बहिरन्तश्च भूतानाम् अचरं चरमेव च सूक्ष्मत्वात्तदविज्ञेयम् दूरस्थं चान्तिके च तत्.
That is outside and inside beings, inanimate as well as animate. It is unknowable, avidnyayam. Why? Because of its sukshmatva, because it is subtle. Anything that is subtle cannot be known. And then he says, durastham, it is far, antike, it is near. This is extracted from the Upanishads. Many verses in the Gita are extracted. Some of them are lifted exactly from the Upanishad. Some are referenced to. In Ishavasya Upanishad he says, Tadejati tannai tad dure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bahyatah. Same concept. He's saying, the theme is, in this verse, he's trying to indicate to us that Atman or Brahman is all pervading. It doesn't exist in one place alone. So if you say that, oh, God resides only in the Himalayas, God resides only in Tirupati or Mecca or Medina or Jerusalem or the Vatican, then you haven't understood. Because Atman is all pervading, it's within and without. It exists everywhere. Just as when you get into a dream, when you go to sleep and you project a dream, in the dream, as long as you are in the dream, you see separateness. But once you wake up, you understand that every aspect of the dream is pervaded by the waker's mind. The waker's mind is inside and outside all beings and things in the dream. Is that not so? That's all that he's saying. It's all pervading. It's everywhere, including the trash can. And therefore it is that in the Indian culture, everything is worshipped. People don't understand that. Say, what kind of vague people are you? You worship even a disease? You know, chicken pox and diseases like that are worshipped as Devi. They don't understand it because they don't understand this basic theme that Atman is all pervading. But how do you locate it? How do you find Atman? Where to find Atman? Within. So, an all pervading entity, if you try searching for it outside, you're not going to capture it. But wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, even in this city which is so called a commercial capital and materialistic, this, that and the other, stop yourself, look within, you'll get it. So once you understand this, then that urge to go for, what is it called now, spiritual tourism doesn't exist. The concept of spiritual tourism doesn't exist in India. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, look within. Inside and outside everything. Charam, acharam. Itself unmoving supports all movements. Why is it unmoving? Because it's everywhere. It's all pervading. An all pervading entity cannot move, because the principle of movement is you can only move from a place where you exist to a place where you don't exist. Since Atman exists everywhere, there is no place where it does not exist, therefore it cannot move. Unmoving. But it supports movement of all creatures. In a way, what he's saying is Atman exists in the inanimate as well as the animate. Atman exists in inert objects. Atman exists in living beings also. Then he says, it is far, it is near. Again, when he says far and near, he is talking about all pervading. But in this, there is a suggestion. It is far for a person who is looking in the other direction, who is pursuing the world for happiness. For such a person, Atman is very far. But for a person who is turned introvert, Atman is very near. He is so intimately connected with us. Atman is very intimately connected with us. And yet we miss it. So far and yet so near. So near and yet so far. Avidnyayam, because of sukshmatva, subtler than the intellect and therefore inconceivable. And that's why you have to get all your resources together and direct them towards smashing of this ignorance. Only then will you get there. Because the equipments by themselves are of no use. They don't get you there. And yet that's the only resource available to us. The body, mind and intellect are the only three resources available to us. To use these to transcend them. That's the principle. 17.
Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktamiva cha sthitam bhuta bhartru cha tagneyam grasishnu prabhavishnu cha.
Avibhaktam, undivided, yet remaining in beings as if divided. That is to be known as the creator, maintainer and destroyer of all beings. Avibhaktam, undivided. Just as the sun is undivided, the original sun up above is undivided. But when you look at the reflected sun in different mirrors, it appears to be divided. That one ekam sun appears to be pluralistic, many. Why? Wherever there is a reflecting surface, a reflected sun appears. So if your focus is on the reflections, it appears pluralistic, divided. That's what he's saying here. Remaining in beings as if divided. Atman is one. There's a philosopher, Western philosopher, who said,